So thank you so much for being here. My name is Marie Nougier. I'm the Head of Research and Communications at the International Drug Policy Consortium. And I'm also here representing the core group of the European Union Civil Society Forum on Drugs. So I have two hats today. It's very exciting. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today to talk about an issue that is really salient in IDPC's work and also in the work of the Civil Society Forum on Drugs. We are here to talk about good practice examples of how civil society and governments can work together to promote and to implement drug policy reforms. So during the event, we're going to highlight two case studies. One of them is going to be at the European Union level. So as IDPC and myself in particular, we've been very much engaged in the Civil Society Forum on Drugs. And we are going to basically have one representative from the forum to talk about some of the examples of engagement with the European Union on their drug strategy. And then we're going to hear from Finland, from Elina, who has been a very trusted colleague and partner, to talk a bit about how she has felt was the added value of engagement with civil society. Then we're going to turn to the national level, and I'm very, very happy to have two representatives from Norway. One from the Norwegian Parliament and another person who is working for an organization of people who use drugs. And Norway is a very interesting example of how civil society has worked very strongly with the government to promote drug policy reform and access to harm reduction. So starting off, with the EU case study, and we're going to hear from Iga Kender-Czerniowska. I'm really sorry for butchering your name. Iga is working for the Youth Organizations for Drugs Action, and she's also a core group member of the Civil Society Forum on Drugs. And the working group that she's sharing within the CSFD is focusing on the EU drug strategy. So Iga, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Marie. Welcome, everyone. Is it working already? All right, so yes, hello, my name is Iga Kender-Czerniowska, and as Marie said, I'm working in a youth organization for drug action. I'm a deputy director of the organization, and at CSFD I'm coordinating a working group on the EU drug strategy and action plan. And I would like to show you a few examples of work that we've been doing for the last couple of years in the cooperation with the European Commission. But for those of you who don't really know the context, so Civil Society Forum on Drugs is an expert body, advisory body for the European Commission. It was created in 2007 based on the Commission's Green Paper of the civil society involvement in drug policy. And it comprises of 45, okay. Can you actually, all right. Okay, it's not working now. So I'll,
Olivia, can you just maybe
yeah,
the slides?
I will need your, one more. Yes, so it's 40 to 45 NGOs selected by the European Commission for three years terms. So every 3 years there is a call for participation, for membership announced. NGOs basically apply, and the Commission selects 40-45 of them. And the goal of the Civil Society Forum on Drugs is to provide this kind of broad platform of dialogue between civil society and the European Union, and to support drug policy implementation and formulation on the European level through practical advice. And we have 4 working groups currently in the CSFD. One group is the one that I coordinate on the EU drug strategy and action plan. The second one is coordinated by Marie on the international relations. We have a working group on the civil society involvement in drug policy on the national level, and finally on minimum quality standards in the demand reduction services. Can we please further? Yeah, so we can distinguish these three main fields where Civil Society Forum on Drugs works. We have advocacy activities, we have various tools that we've developed to be used by both civil society and decision makers, and we are active also in the research area. So for the advocacy, as you can see, like we have pretty many activities. Among others, we've contributed to the drafting of the EU Action Plan on Drugs 2017-2020, and our views as a civil society representatives were taken into consideration, among others, in the areas of harm reduction, including human rights, alternative to coercive sanctions, or treating comorbidities. Very recently, we've contributed also to the evaluation of the EU drug strategy 2013-2020. We've been interviewed by the external evaluator, we participated in focus groups, and we also provided a position paper of the Civil Society Forum on Drugs to be included in the final evaluation of the strategy. We've also created some graphic materials and informational ones for organizations, NGOs working in drug policy area all over Europe to make them more aware and familiar with what European drug strategy and action plans are. Also, that's the working group 3, which developed this briefing paper on EU drug strategy action plan, and also about the importance of civil society involvement in drug policy on national level. And further, the working group on the international relations has organized in December, quite recently, a meeting in the European Parliament for members of the European Parliament, also to make them more familiar with the current and future issues and challenges that are ongoing in the drug policy on the European level. And on the top of that, also contributions in the dialogues with the third parties, so like bilateral dialogues with Russia or USA. CSFD also has provided input to these activities of the European Union. So more or less that much about the advocacy during the last 2-3 years. And regarding the tools that CSFD have developed, there are two major achievements here. First of them is the part of the briefing paper that I've already mentioned, that is basically a guideline for non-governmental organizations on how to use European drug policy documents, so action plan and drug strategy, for advocacy purposes on the national level. And the second one are the guidelines for implementing the minimum quality standards for services that are implemented either by the governments or NGOs in the demand reduction area. And finally, yes. And finally, again. Okay, and finally, in the research area, we've been quite active as well during the last years. Please, Andrea. In 2018, we've published a study about the implementation of the European Drug Action Plan on national level. We surveyed professionals working in the field, asking them about the accessibility and quality of drug demand reduction services. 12 key demand reduction services included in the European Drug Action Plan, including this kind of like more innovative interventions like online prevention, drug checking, or naloxone distribution. Last year we've published 4 case studies, 2 from Spain, 1 from Portugal, and 1 from Ireland, about the best practices of civil society organizations' involvement in national drug policies in the context of the European Action Plan, so how these organizations use the action plan and the drug strategy in their advocacy and service delivery activities. In 2018, there was also a conference on civil society involvement in drug policy that was organized in Brussels, and where experts from all over Europe talked for one day, discussed the issues of how this involvement in policy formulation, implementation, evaluation can be improved. And finally, the working group on minimum quality standards also conducted a feasibility study and published, of course, to assess to what extent this tool that they've developed is actually useful and implementable in terms of assessing the quality of prevention, harm reduction, treatment interventions that organizations implement. And what I would like to highlight is that these are, of course, initiatives of Civil Society Forum on Drugs, or of the NGOs that are members of it, but none of them would be possible if not the huge support of the European Union, European Commission, in terms of coordination, communication, communicating own goals, priorities, timelines that we can respond to, and then we can feed into, and of course financial support in the form of the DG Home Justice grants, which basically allowed us to move the work of CSFD to whole another level compared to what was happening and what was our capacity without this kind of funding. So yes, that would be it. Thank you very much for your attention. All the materials can be found. The ones that I displayed can be found on our website. And if you have any questions, then I'm happy to answer via email. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iga. And looking at this way, the work of the CSFD is quite impressive, actually. And as you said, I think the collaborative relationship between the CSFD and the European Union has improved year after year. It was hard at the beginning, and then we managed to find ways of working together, of having a trusting relationship, and of sharing information in a timely manner so that the CSFD would be able to contribute as much as we could to the work of the European Union. But of course, that would not be possible without the openness of trusted member states. And Finland has been absolutely amazing. So Finland held the presidency of the European Union last year. And it was particularly important for us because that was during the negotiations of the ministerial declaration and during the preparations for the ministerial segment here in Vienna. So Elina from the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health in Finland is going to talk a bit more about the relationship with the CSFD at international level. So this is the working group that I was chairing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Iga, also for your good presentation. And good afternoon to you all, and also might say welcome on behalf of the Finnish government, who is also co-sponsoring this event, and I'm happy to be here. Like I said, I'm a ministerial advisor in the Ministry of Social Affairs and Health, Elina Kotovirta, and for the latter half of the last year, I was Finland had the presidency of the Council of the European Union, which meant that I myself was chairing the so-called horizontal drugs group in the EU, which is the body that discussed drugs issues in the European Union. And hence I was invited here to tell you more about how we cooperated and how we found the work with the Civil Society Forum very, very useful. First, I would, of course, there is only these few minutes to speak to you, so of course, I mean, nationally, every EU country have their own networks of NGOs and civil society, which they work and also have their input in their work, also in the EU or in the CND level, but I'm now concentrating on the work that is done actually in the Civil Society Forum on Drugs. I've been around quite a few years already with the drug policies and also with the Civil Society Forum on Drugs. I must say that this has been definitely an evolving cooperation, and I think on the both sides we have learned. We have learned how to kind of understand each other's better, because of course this is a certain kind of bureaucratical, even the way the civil servants work. We have systems and things and horizontal drugs group. And of course, in many ways, civil society can be much more flexible, much more everything than we ever can be. But for example, during our presidency, Civil Society Forum on Drugs really supported us, and I know it's currently supporting the Croatian presidency and did support the Romanian presidency before us and presidencies before and after. We have had informal and formal meetings and well, just like a minor things of sharing our sharing our meeting schedule with the Civil Society Forum so that we could coordinate with the meetings, that they don't collide together, or that we could have you could have the Parliament, the meeting like back to back with our HDG meeting so that it wouldn't collide in anything. So kind of very these practical things that we do together. Also then we have this tradition of having so-called national drug coordinators meeting during every presidency, and for ours, since it was on CND cooperation, we asked and we're really happy to get a contribution from the Civil Society Forum on Drugs that was also discussed in this meeting. We have got contribution for the statements, and especially now for of course the CND. Marie visited HDG meeting just before the CND. We got a valuable input for the whole of the CND and the contents, but also in different things. Cooperation has been good, and I think it's good, and I think it's mutual, and it's easy. Well, you guys are so easy to approach, so there's no problem there. I think the not so easy to approach might come from the government side, maybe sometimes. At least we might be not so quick to answer as you guys are. But also, of course, there has been during the years there has been challenges and things probably in the future too. Which is, of course, one is that like I already mentioned, that the governments and civil society work in quite a different ways. We are so slow. We are so slow. Everything would have changed so many times already. But of course we do serve the governments that we have to serve, and there's a certain bureaucracy also that would be worth to explanation of some days why we are as we are. Also, of course, there are some so-called administrational barriers. We have certain rules and procedures within the EU, for example, with whom the documents are shared and how they are shared. They are meant for the government, so they stay inside the EU family. But therefore, of course, then kind of the contributions we get from you guys with the separate papers, then we kind of add them to our statements. But we can't really do that we take the statement paper and send it to anybody to comment. That's just not how the thing works. So we've had to find these ways to operate and find a way around of these different administrational things. And then one thing where we kind of differ, and I think those have been like the real, I wouldn't say that there has been a quarrel or anything, but I would say that we might have had some problems or issues have been the thing of confidentiality. Of course, we want to be transparent, as transparent we can. But also, especially when Twitter was invented, or when it came, it actually even happened that some of our negotiation positions that were shared by the civil society were tweeted. And then Egypt knew too. And we totally lost. So this is kind of the thing that we need to be also, especially when we are in a tricky position, on some kind of negotiation positions that contain also a lot of tactics, a lot of all kind of things, and still we might lose. I mean, that doesn't mean. But also then it is really imperative that all these kind of things are not necessarily tweet to everybody. Even though we really love to share, like afterwards we can tell and all that, but this is something that we have, but we also have been able to discuss this, I think, in a very good manner and kind of a respective way, kind of explaining also our position, and it was well taken. And for example, yesterday, now I even may say that we had a meeting here with the Civil Society Forum on Drugs, and we also discussed resolutions, but what decided together that was the confidential part. And this is kind of just between us, what was discussed there and not tweeted or blogged. Because that is also important, that we can have things in confidentiality, even if we totally understand transparency, and that is of course in the government's law also to be very transparent. But all in all, I think there are barriers, there might be challenges, but they're definitely to be conquered. And definitely I find it very valuable that EU has this system, and like I said, the European Commission have been kind of supporting by the manpower, but the money comes from the EU, so it's the EU governments who are supporting this thing, and I just believe, I truly believe that this is getting better and better all the time. And I think we are learning from each other a lot, and definitely looking forward to working with you also in the future, even if not with the burden of the presidency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I think you raise a very important point in terms of the learning experience of how we function as the CSFD, how we engage with the EU, how we make sure that we don't do anything that's counterproductive. So yes, that was an issue I think like 3 or 4 years ago, which we learned from as the CSFD. So we always now are very clear in terms of the rules when we meet, whether the discussion is public, is private, and make sure that we don't do anything that could undermine the engagement of the CSFD, but also undermine the work of the EU. So I think, so thank you so much, Elina, for all the support. And I'm now going to move to Norway. We're very excited to have 2 speakers from Norway because the country has undergone significant changes over the past few years, in particular in terms of harm reduction, the move towards decriminalization, and in great part this was thanks to the continued push for reform from NGOs, from networks of people who use drugs, and the willingness of the government to take these considerations into account and to fully incorporate that into the national policies. So to start the discussion, I am very happy to give the floor to Carl Erik Grimstad, who is a member of parliament of the Norwegian Governmental Party and member of the Standing Committee for Health and Care Services.
Thank you. Thank you. So, nothing about us without us. Most of you are present today, and I think that this is a slogan belonging to us dealing with drug policy. In fact, it's not essentially our slogan. In fact, it has been a vital part of the Central European political tradition for at least 500 years. It's only about time that it involves drug policy formation as well. The Latin version of it is nihil de nobis, sine nobis. It speaks to the need for meaningful involvement and contribution from people who are affected by political decisions to take part in the process themselves. We are basically talking minority rights, or should I say human rights, to all groups and layers of society. Now my country prides itself for being at the forefront of these rights. We have a fairly good record when it comes to equal rights for vote, women's rights, rights of ethnic minorities, disabled persons, etc. But so far, when it comes to people who for some reason or other use illicit drugs, it has not been the issue. Now Norway's Minister of Health and Care Services has been addressing this meeting about our upcoming law to deal with this issue, and I will not repeat this. I will simply state what Martin Luther King once said, and again Barack Obama in Chicago 2008 after winning the presidential election. It's been a long time coming. Our law on the decriminalization has not yet been finalized, but there is no doubt that it will take effect within the next couple of years. I represent the Liberal Party in our National Assembly. I was elected in 2017. By profession, I'm an associate professor of journalism, and I joined the Parliament Committee on Health without prior knowledge in this field, although my party has had decriminalization on the agenda for at least 20 years. Within 2 months in the Storting, as we call it, I was introduced to 3 or 4 organizations advocating a more liberal stand on drug issues. I was struck by the dedication and seriousness and tenacity of their work, and soon we arranged several seminars inside the Parliament building, the most striking being composed of 30 to 40 people receiving substitute treatment. The reaction of the Parliament security staff was one of astonishment, as they saw people with various degrees of health issues, to put it mildly, entering the Parliament building. One of the guards called me, whispering discreetly, "There will be no use of needles in our toilets." But things are different now. only 3 years later, and the civil society organizations has played a vital part in this process. During the last couple of years, my committee has, among other countries, visited Portugal, Canada, California, and the Netherlands, addressing drug issues. This has been a privilege, of course, and has given me the insight and inspirations in strategies and approaches in this field. In a meeting with the head of CCAD, the Portuguese National Narcotics Directorate, I asked him about the most vital outcome of Portugal's reform effort. He did not answer that the HIV/AIDS epidemic among drug users has more or less now is more or less extinct. He did not answer that the number of overdose deaths has been reduced by 90% or so. His answer was simply destigmatization. Norway has done a great deal in this field, but my country is still among the shameful statistical top of overdose deaths, together with Sweden, another country which is also considered among the world's best 2 or 3 countries to live in. This is, of course, a paradox. I believe that the only way out of this serious problem is by the way of reducing the stigma associated with drug use. Thus, our upcoming decriminalization law is not an end in itself. It's merely a step on the road to stop the meaninglessly high numbers of overdose deaths, to stop the violence affecting vulnerable addicts, to treat people as patients, not as punishable criminals. In this work, we need health workers on board. We definitely need the police on board, but most of all, we need the general public on board. And again, in this work, I call for the participation of the civil society organizations. Therefore, I conclude by stating how truly proud I am to be invited here and within the framework of a large international movement to take part in encouraging the user organizations to take a leading role in this field and to encourage the future work and participation. Nothing about us without us. It's been a long time coming, but we still have some distance ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this really inspiring presentation, and I just wanted to highlight 3 words: the tenacity of civil society organizations, the meaningful engagement of civil society in policymaking processes, and destigmatization. Arild, you are next on my list of speakers. Arild's organization, the Association for Humane Drug Policy, has been very tenacious in its work over the past years to highlight the issues that were related to drug policies in Norway, to keep the fight going even when it's really hard, and it's also an incredible example of how people who use drugs can be meaningfully engaged in the discussion. So Arild, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for sponsors. I'm so proud to be here. We are looking towards Portugal these days, and to Switzerland and to Canada, but after this year we will all say look to Norway. And that is because of us, the drug user representatives. I have been a problematic drug user all my life, most of my life, and I've been considered as, as garbage for my society, but now I'm one of the biggest resources in my society, and I'm a special advisor on every level in the society, on the low threshold stuff, on the clinics, in the hospitals, in the directory, in the department, in the parliament with our friends in the politicians, and in the government. We are on every level, and why? Because we had a racist policy with prohibition and criminalization. It was just ideology, and no one knew what to do. And then the HIV epidemic were considered even bigger problem than the drug problem. So you have to change perspective. And how? What should you do? Well, you have to talk with the people with the lived experience. So because we started to hand out needles and so on, I mean, it was unthinkable for the politicians. We knew that that was what we had to do. And in 2004, we got patient rights. because we had to have substitution treatment. And in 2005, we got our first drug consumption room. But we had a lot of conservatives that wanted to close down the drug consumption room, and they just wanted a few hundred to get the best treatment, the more best life-saving treatment you can get, which is substitution treatment. So in 2008, we were very worried and we were in despair, and they should have a police rally against the open drug scenes. They were going to close down the drug consumption room, and they were going to narrow the substitution treatment. So we went down as representatives to all the active drug users and said, come with us, we go outside the parliament. And we had banners and posters, and we were standing outside the parliament yelling in despair. And on our way up, a leader of a party says to us, recalls us and says, you are not going up to the parliament. Oh shit, you're coming in. So we went to the parliament, and they were said we should come in. I mean, what could go wrong? Well, they had security just like to this building. Oh no! Everyone was running off, and we told them, no, come back. And the people in the parliament said, we're not going to do anything with your drugs. It's not criminal today. If you have weapons or something, we have to put them and lock them in, but the drugs. So that was the first time we had decriminalization inside the parliament in Norway in 2008, and we all went in and they listened to us like any interest group in the society. You have to listen to us too. And after that, I went out and I thought that the media, everyone was so interested in this. So every time I said something, poof, it was in the media. So I said, we must not only prevent HIV, we must prevent hepatitis C, and we must have better harm reduction. Ascorbic acid, steering cups, sterile salt water, filters. I mean, it's not very interesting for people, for the drug addicts, yes, but everything went into the media, and we got it. So I thought, okay, so then I had naloxone, and I said, well, the drug users should carry nasal naloxone, and now we have nasal naloxone. And we said, we have to inspire the drug users. A politician don't know that, but we have to inspire the injecting drug users to go on to smoking heroin. And all of a sudden, it was in the first in the news. And then we got an overdose national strategy from the parliament. So Bent Høie, who is now is a conservative, is now the Minister of Health. He was always opposing, we were discussing, we had indifferences, and when he was Minister of Health, he had to travel all around the country to tell about the national overdose strategy. So he said, we have this strategy, we are having naloxone nasal spray, we have switch campaign from, it was this tolerance and pragmatism that we never had before, so he had to travel around, and he said, and now you're going to get to know what this is. Ari, can you come and tell them? So we traveled around the world, around the country, and I wish we were around the world, but we are here with you. And then we had a change of opinion, and we understood that the drug users unions, we are 4 of them from Norway here today. We have power, we are working together, we have this togetherness, acknowledgement, respect for the politicians. We are working together. We should cooperate with us because we know what it is about. So in 2016 we had this petition in the biggest newspaper, nothing about us without us. Decriminalize drug use and possession, and more harm reduction, more substitution treatment, and involve us in the CND. And here we are. Because the Minister of Health, he replied, yes, you should be decriminalized. We must have a drug policy reform in Norway. So when Bent Høie was here on Monday, he mentioned that we are having a drug policy reform. It's evidence-based, it's human rights-based, it's civilizing our society. We were just getting better, and it's cost-effective. Drug users will live longer. It's just humane. It's human rights. I'm so proud of him, and thank you.
It's great to hear good news.